Hey everyone, Yasin here, and I'm joined
Bye.
by Flavia,
Hello.
and it's another psychological problems podcast. Now I feel a bit embarrassed saying that because it's come to my knowledge that a podcast is actually like a specific thing um, that is for iPods and stuff. So I guess this isn't a podcast technically because it's just on YouTube, but uh, hey, we're so many episodes in that it's not going to change now. Also, this is going to be an episode that I will be showing stuff on the screen. So I thought it's good to give some warning because I've had ones where I show stuff on the screen and then people find out much later that things were being shown. So yeah, it's one of those. So yeah, let's get down to it. It's been 2 months, I think,
Yeah.
since the last podcast, and that's because I pulled my patrons and found what they wanted to see, and what one was process videos of me making a picture and showing my process, and what came in second was the psychological problems podcast. So I figured I'll do maybe like one or two of the process ones every, or like I'll do one a month, maybe, whatever, and then after do a podcast. So how have the months been? It's been a little while, and how have they been for you?
They've been not that exciting, but that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Why is
Yeah.
that a good thing?
I feel like the term excitement lately for me has become more akin to distraction. So I kind of got rid of my Facebook altogether and just stopped ingesting information, and I'm just trying to focus on getting better.
Yeah, for me it's been pretty. I guess it was depressing at first. I had quite a bit of depression to deal with. That's still something I have to deal with. For people who know my story, it's not like I'm free from bad thoughts and things like that. It's just, I guess I'm a bit better at handling it than I used to be. But other than that, yeah, I was sort of thinking about my work and what I like, and it's just super confusing. The styles that I was doing kept changing depending on what person was out, kind of. It would
Yeah.
change. So it got to the, like, you know better than I can remember probably what I was going through.
Yeah, you were quite down in the dumps, and then very like inconsistent with what you were producing in terms of, oh, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but
Yeah, it would be a case of trying to do something and then finding out that, oh, hey, today I don't remember how to draw because I'm not the drawing one. And what I found actually helped me was music. Depending on what music I listened to, certain other parts would come out and then give me their, like, here, I can draw like this. We now draw like this. So I went from like scribbly stuff to more cartoony stuff to realistic stuff, and so I figured this isn't good. I have to figure out a way that all of us can be present in a way, at least in some small part. And so I thought about making these charts that would help me decide or figure out who I am and what I like and which direction to go. Because prior to this, I've always been following, like, I started with an idea of what I wanted, but then it was a matter of, well, I don't know how to do that, so let me get skill to be able to do that. And then in the process of acquiring skill, I'd find out another thing I didn't know how to do, and it's like, well, that would help, I guess. And then when it got to pointy chins, I had this portfolio, which I didn't really like. And I realized, well, I don't like my work. Let me try and do work that I like. And then I guess the more recent thing is realizing like, oh, what I like is not necessarily what is natural to me. So then what is natural to me? And so I started making these charts. So the first one I made was this one. I wanted to know what values I actually liked, because I have this thing where, especially with the pointy chins stuff, it's very pastel, like very high key, and it feels like, well, that's what I like, so that's what I should do, right? But I realized that I don't think that's who I am. Like, that just didn't feel right. If I thought of what does my work look like, not what would I wish it would be like, because then it would probably be different, but rather just if I could imagine myself in the future with more skill and then think about the work, I kind of had a sense of like the values would be dark, but not black. There's not too many blacks except for accents. There would be color, and that's what I kind of was drawn to the pastel thing for, is the color aspect of it. And it would be very intense, but there wouldn't be too many brights in it. It wouldn't be bright and cheery and colorful. So I thought, is there work that I've seen or that I've done which I feel has the values I like, or has the colors I like, or the textures? And I made this chart. So one of the people I really like is Bumsky, and these two works are done by Bumsky, and I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, but
I thought it's a girl.
It's a girl?
I think so.
I know their name is Min Yum, but I don't know if that's... Anyway, I'm ignorant on this, but I really like how colorful things get, but at the same time, they're very loose, and the values are quite dark. So that's something that was pretty like, that's interesting. They're quite dark, but there's not a lot of black. You can see like this border is black. There's not really values that go to pure black. Here, there's a few that get really dark, but it's not like an overwhelmingly dark picture. Whereas I would say even this one, like a lot of it gets really dark, but then you have these very colorful areas. And so it's like, okay, so that's definitely something that speaks to me. And then if I thought about other artists, like Rangia also does stuff like that. Like all these artists have this, well, these ones, I guess, have this kind of like mid-tone value with saturated colors, but also desaturated areas. I suppose this would be the most saturated, but even this, it's not like this is... like this part is desaturated, pretty desaturated. There's a lot that's not super colorful. And then in terms of my own works, I felt like this one kind of was close to that. This one, because it's a bit darker, this one as well felt closer to that. But what they were missing that I found I really liked in the work of these artists just by looking at it was sort of a texture. Because I'm not really a fan of texture, or at least I think I'm not a fan of texture. I think I like smooth images. And so I kind of was going for that. And with this one by, I think it's Guimarães or Guimarães, or I'm not sure. But Moonlight Orange he goes by. His stuff is a lot more smooth, but it has this bright, like it's still lower in the value scale, especially in the background, but it doesn't go to black. And then he has these like glowy bits, which I really like. So I started to think about different textures that I like, different painting styles. So I really like this type of texture in painting, like the Sargent stuff. It's good. It's stuff that I feel is good. Again, I think another Rangia. So I realized, okay, I need texture in my work. And the reason I'm doing this is because I feel like when you know what you want in your work, you can practice to get that. So if I think, for instance, I like things super smooth, then I'm not going to really put effort into trying to learn how to use brushes, how to use mixer brushes and textured brushes and adding noise and adding texture, because I don't really like that. or at least I think I don't really like that. So then it's a case of like, well, I'll work on smoothing things. So I got pretty good with smudging and stuff. So when I think about, well, I do kind of like I like this one because it's flat, but it does have a bit of grain to it. But yeah, so I feel okay. I texture, and then in terms of what colors do I like a lot of iridescent colors. I realized like I like this creature, and I like these snake scales. And I like opals for that reason. I like this type of like super, like I like this image as an image as well because it's not that colorful, although it feels very colorful, but here it gets really, really colorful, or at least again, it's got the illusion of a lot of color. With these fish, I like the design of it, the shapes that are present. So I realized I don't think I'm a big fan of fish, but I realized like a lot of the shapes I like are present in angelfish. A lot of the patterns, it feels like if I imagine someone wearing clothing, I don't really think of clothing so much. I think of more like a person turning into a creature, but they have elements which feel like clothing. So I did, for instance, a snake lady who she's wearing, or she turns into a snake, but the snake kind of folds. And sorry about the low resolution. I tried to fit it on a single page so I could talk about it. So I like that. I like these type of, this is from a TV show called Empress of China. And I really like the designs of these, not necessarily like individual designs, but sort of the way it looks decorative and regal. Again, the colors, the shapes and things I think work really well. I also like glowy things. I like shiny things, and like this fish glows. I think it's an eel. I like, see here, it's a Sargent painting of an octopus, but I like how it's shiny. So it's like, okay, I like shiny things, I like glowy things, I like iridescent things, I like certain shapes, and I like certain value ranges, which is actually a big deal for someone like me. Like it might seem like, well, yeah, you're just saying what you like, but for me, without having given enough thought, it was quite confusing. And I like these types of colors where it's mostly desaturated, but then you get hits of color that really sing. So that was a first chart. And then I thought, well, there are other charts that I could make. And I also figure I'm probably going to, for people who are taking mentorships with me, I'm probably going to have them do similar things. So then I started to think about art I really liked. And this is kind of where I was going with the pointy chins. Like, I never thought about, before pointy chins, what I liked in art. Because I was just looking at skill. I was just looking at things like, well, that's well done. But not so much what I really like. And so when I thought about what I liked, you can see how much, on the whole, it's a lot more high key, a lot more drawn. I like drawings. I like flat colors. I like things like that. So here are just like a few. It's really hard actually to narrow it down to just a handful of images I like because there's tons, and obviously I didn't get to include all of them. But here's like Joe Mad. Really like the way his pencil work is. I don't like it as much after it's inked. But that too has a degree of texture. So this was also a hint. Like maybe your stuff has some texture, even though you don't think it has texture. Maybe just things like the way you shade acts as texture. This artist, Ovopack, I really like his work because it's colorful. I'm assuming it's a he, maybe it's not. But anyway, it's very colorful. It's got cool shapes, very appealing, I feel. And then it's got the kind of decorations that I think are really neat. I guess they're kind of like Final Fantasy stuff. Here's some Kush art stuff. I like the values. This is Ramon Nunez. I really liked, he did a while back this series with animals, and I really liked those drawings he did. It's got a lot of energy, a lot of flow. This is Kunihiko Tanaka. I don't remember exactly, but it's a Xenogears artist. I really like that one. Maddie Blitz, another Xenogears. Here's a Doxy image. I guess a lot of these are characters because I realize like this character and this character are the same character, and I think these two are the same character, but I don't know. I don't know these things, so it's just like, oh, that's a cool thing. I don't know what it is. Hyung Tae Kim, some more Bumsky stuff, I think. Maybe not. Not sure. I forget. Akihiko Yoshida stuff, and yeah, just stuff that I think I like. So it's like, okay, so here's what you like, but these are the values and patterns and textures you want. Ooh. So now we have conflict because these aren't exactly the same things. So it's a matter of translating as much as I can and looking for certain artists that do kind of cross over. And I feel like with Ovopack, there is a degree of crossover, and with Krenz, Kushart, there is some crossover, but it's still not as dark as I like. So that's something I have to remember. Just because you're inspired by certain artists or you look at their work and you think, well, I like this and I like that, it doesn't mean it necessarily, like the whole thing is what you do. You don't copy them one for one. You take parts and you figure like, okay, well, this I like, and so I'm going to incorporate it, but maybe this other part I also like, but it doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel like what I imagine would be in my work, for whatever reason. So this is work I really like. All right. Now, this is the stuff pretty much, not with the exception of this Batman and this one. I did these a few years back, maybe 2010, 11, 12, something like that. And these are works that I've done which seem to be popular. Like, often I'll hear people saying, oh, I really like this piece of yours. And it's one of these. Now, this is very different from art I really like. So, at least I feel like that. It's, like, quite realistic and ish. And, like, I'm trying to put color in, especially, I guess, with this guy. He's kind of got that, it's desaturated, but there's hits of color. I don't feel like the design is very good or the shapes. I mean, this one, at least there are some shapes to it. I like the face area anyway. It's like, okay, so that's sharp. But yeah, I really hate these ones. This one I especially hate because I tried to, I used myself as reference. Like, I took photos and then I just was like copying it and whatever, I think I tried to add a lot more muscle than I really have, but I just don't like it. But it does have, like, I guess, some energy and flow and stuff. But this was pretty much pre-pointy chins where I was going, and it just felt like I was missing a lot of the stuff that I actually liked. And so I felt like, well, I need to either incorporate the stuff or just change into a different artist. And at first I thought it was probably the changing into a different artist that needed to be happening. Like, I just like cell shading and I just like drawing, and I don't even like cell shading, I just like drawing. But if it's got to be colored, simple colors. So that was really kind of deciding what I wanted to be, but not really paying attention to what I was already doing. Because if I look at a lot of these, especially like this one, I can see sharp shapes. I can see a desire for a simplistic design. Okay, you've got this basic triangle. Your value range is pretty subtle. It's kind of on the darker side, and you're not going really heavy with heavy blacks. And what I used to think was that that's a case of me just not knowing how to do that. Like, I'm just shitty with full value ranges. I didn't consider that maybe I actually like that. That's something that I want to incorporate, because it felt like, well, but if you're just around middle grays and then you've got a bit of darks, that feels a bit boring. Like, shouldn't you use a full value range? Shouldn't you go all the way from white to black and have a lot there? Shouldn't you be using a lot of colors, because that's a sign that you know how to handle color and stuff? So
you did the purple one as a speed paint, right?
Yeah, I did the purple one as a speed paint. I did, um, I think I did this one as a speed painting as well. I know that one was popular when I did it, and I really don't like it. I like certain okay, so yeah, I like the lips being like this orange. I like the eyes kind of being this teal. I don't like the skin tone so much, but I like these marks. And I guess there's things in this that are in stuff I've done that I actually like. So here are things that and this was kind of hard to find, but it was stuff I've done that I like. Maybe not 100%, but more that I like than I dislike. So I like this. I think it's pretty cool. I like the outfit. Flavia kind of helped me with the outfit. This one was probably one of my last pieces. I did it like tons and tons, not tons, but I mean many years ago. I don't even remember when. But it was one of the last pieces that was emotionally connected to me. Like I used to have a lot of emotion in my work, and I really wanted to show that. And at some point, I kind of felt dead or numb, and I didn't feel like I had so much emotion anymore, which is why I didn't want to continue down that road of I draw sad pictures, because it felt like I was a hypocrite then. Like, well, I want pictures to be genuine, but how can I make them genuine when I don't even have these feelings anymore? So I focused more on design. Like, oh, well, if I'm not going to have emotion, at least my picture should look cool. So stuff like this. I feel like, well, it's pretty simple and there's no real emotion, but she's got character at least, I feel. It's like the ear's too high. But she's got like personality, and I like how the eyes are kind of glowing. With this one, I like how it's funny. It feels like, oh, you've done a different body type and you've got someone with a character. Maybe they're not someone you like. Like, if I look at this person and I think about a real life equivalent of her, I doubt I would like that person. I don't like this type of person. They seem very like they'll look down on you, and that's not something I'm that interested in. And then these ones are similar as well. Like these people that I wouldn't necessarily like, but I'm more interested in their character, like capturing character, whatever. Anyway, this one, I think one of the parts I like the most about this is just the blue, how it's kind of subtle, and then you've got this bleed. I kind of like that. But I mean, overall, it's okay. I would say, like, if someone said, "Did you make this?" I would probably say yes. Whereas for some of them,
did you make the lizard barber? No, it wasn't me.
It was a different artist. It's not me.
Not me.
Don't look at me.
It's some guy called Circa.
Oh, okay. So this is also a similar thing. Like, I feel the character's appealing, but also different. And that's something I really like. I want to draw characters that are different just because I get bored. I get bored of seeing the same character. So, like, with a lot of anime, although I really like anime, they tend to do the same faces over and over again. And with a lot of them, it's like you have a face and a nose and a mouth that remains, like the basic head, nose, and mouth remain the same. Maybe you have 2 or 3 versions of eyes, and then you have hair. But you kind of, it's just changing colors of hair, changing colors of eyes, really. Like, sometimes it feels like that. Like, all you're doing is very minor changes. So, for me, I don't like that. I prefer to be more different. So, I mean, these ones are kind of similar, but they're kind of different to what you normally see, I guess. This one, too, it's got kind of a different face shape than what I normally see. And this one as well, and kind of most of the ones I like. But, I mean, they're still, in my opinion, kind of like pretty girls. So I do like drawing my pretty females. as Bob would say. That's my drawing of Bob Maypeg. So this one I like just because that's kind of how it feels when he stands. Like, it feels like,
it's quite accurate.
that's what it feels like. Maybe not that's what it is, but that's what it feels like. This one I like just because it's like he's laughing. Like, it feels like it makes me smile to look at it just because I feel like I captured his expression really well. Although this one's really old. And then these ones I like, not in terms of skill. Like, I don't think I did a good job on them. But I do feel like I like the variations. And perhaps it has something to do with being a dissociative person. But I'm really into variations on a theme. And this one is two of my characters. So that's Xeon from Affinity and Kay. And I like it because it's, I don't know, it feels right, or I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, this one, just another pretty girl. This one I like because it's weird. So, all whatever. This one I like because it's all spiky and pushed and sharp. This one as well, it's just like, it's okay. It's not great, nothing special, but I consider pretty much all of this stuff here, with the exception of this one and this one, to not really be art though. I think of it more like decoration, or just something. It's not meaningful, it's not substantial, but it's just, oh hey, you've got character, that's cool, you've done a picture. And then this one is like one of my favorite things that I've done because it's got all the empressy things and I like the shapes, and it's like, ooh, yeah, that's cool. So the funny thing is, though, while I was looking for these, you can see obviously a lot of them are sketches, so I don't actually like a lot of my finished stuff, or almost any of it. But even with the sketches, I think in Pointy Chins I'm on day 1600 and something. I don't know. Something like that. It's whatever. So when I was going back in time, well, okay, I don't mean like a time machine. When I was
going back in time.
When I was looking through my drawings to see what ones I liked, I was looking through hundreds and hundreds of pages. And in the beginning, it was like every few pages I would find something I like. And then it was every, 20 or 30 or 40. And then it was like an entire 100 pages would go by and I saw nothing I liked. And it got fewer and fewer as I went on. Like, the thing that was really good to notice, though, it really requires you to do thousands of drawings, but it's this idea that you might not like anything for a very long time, and it takes a while to get it. And something else I discovered is if I went backwards to the older pieces, what I was seeing is, there would be the odd picture I liked, but it would be something like, I managed to get the face shape in the way I like it. I managed to get the eyes the way I liked it. But it felt like a one-off. It was like, I can't really replicate that, but for this image, I got it. And then I felt at the time like, cool, I like this one. Or I like this one more. But it didn't feel like everything was right. And what happens over time is, as you develop, or at least for me, and I'm pretty sure it works the same way for pretty much everyone, but as you develop, you learn to do the things that you used to only be able to do as a one-off. And it just becomes something that it's like, if I want to draw that face shape, I can do it. And that's just average for me now. That's a normal, I've done a face shape that I like. Kind of like any of these. It's like none of these are special anymore to me. Like this one, if I'd done that a few years back, I'd be like, whoa, I really got a thing. But now it's just like, well, I can do this super easily. This is not a hard thing. But it's got that look that I like. So as you do more and more, you refine it and you work on things. And I'm still working on the bodies a lot in terms of making it all work. But with faces, it's not so hard anymore. And so there is light at the end of the tunnel. If you are someone who's scared that there's not, there is. You will get there, but I don't know. You might be very quick in learning, and maybe you'll get there really soon, or you might be like me and it takes kind of a while. But when I think about it, 1,600 days is not that long. It's a few years.
Yeah.
I don't know math well enough to tell you how. It's more than 4 years, right? Yeah, it's more than 4 years. But I suppose it's something to at least, like, well, if you keep at it, you eventually get it. I was thinking about it in terms of Inktober, because I draw every day a page in ink, but I've been doing that for so many years now that it's like a never-ending Inktober. So if someone asks me, do you do Inktober? No, of course not. But because I don't like doing things just because it's in. Like, oh, this is the time we do this. This is self-portrait day, so we do I don't. I would rather do it if I feel like doing it, not really because it is the day to do it. Not that I have anything against someone who does like that. But the thing for me is just like, well, I just do it over and over again. And I don't think I've had big improvement, but certainly some. And I guess that's something I could talk about as well, this idea of big improvement. Because sometimes I get comments of people talking about, for instance, but it is stuff that unfortunately sticks in my mind, I'll get compared to cynics. And it's this weird thing where people will say, well, you're not even as good as cynics. How can you criticize them? I don't think I criticize them too much. But I do occasionally say something like, oh, maybe I don't agree with this or that. Or usually it's just I'm bitching about the fact that he said something that kind of got under my skin. But the honest thing is, and maybe this is just because of how I was, like, where my upbringing, I don't know, how I was, not really how I was raised, but more just from what I expected in life. For me, when I encountered Cynics' stuff, he was on a forum that I was just lurking on, and then eventually I got the courage to post under a fake name. So I was posting there for a few years, but under a fake name. And then Cynics to me was one of those people like, whoa, he's one of those big shot people, like one of the really cool people. So I never imagined that I would be as good as him, and I'm not, but the thing is, it's not something that I'm thinking like, I'm better than Cynics. It's more like, this is weird that you're saying his name in the same sentence as mine, because it's like, I'm not good. What the heck? So on that front, it's kind of funny, I guess. It just seems ridiculous. It's like, well, I mean, I guess there are a bunch of artists that I would look up to, but being, I don't know, it just seems weird. It's like, well, I'm not nearly as good as him. And like guys like Ahmed too, Ahmed Al-Duri, it's just, whoa. I look at them and it's like, whoa, I remember seeing you posting what? I don't know. So, moving on. So this is art I feel is technically good, and I do think it's really, really good. I'm not saying it in any way that it's not, because it's really awesome. But this is the stuff I used to not know whether it was stuff I liked, because I do like it, but it's more like I respect it more than just like it. Because when I like stuff, it's sort of an emotional reaction, and when I see this, I get more of a, if there is an emotion, it could be fear or awe. I suppose awe is the best
Run away from a booger.
Yeah, it's just like amazing skill. And obviously these aren't all of the artists. It's just, okay, so here we have Sargent, some Hudson River paintings, Craig Mullins, Jimmy Jones, another Craig Mullins. I'll walk you through some of why I like this. So this one I just, it's a Sargent. I just like how to me it's very masterfully done in how much or how little needs to be said to convey something. These, I just think the lighting is amazing. The Hudson River stuff, just like, what? You've got so much going on, so much atmosphere. It feels like in this window, there is an entire world. And that is amazing. With Bugaro, it's more just technically flawless in my view. Just your values are good, your composition's good, your anatomy is good, your colors are good, everything is good. The only thing that's missing for me is the subject matter. I think the meaning, there is no deep emotion that I feel when I look at this. There is more like, oh, it's a pretty story being told, like a narration. With this one, I really like the design. I like the composition. It's one of Jamie Jones's earlier works, but I really, really like it. I think it's just excellent. These are Casey Bach. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Bach. I think it's Bach. But anyway, paintings. Again, earlier works, and I like them a lot. This Craig Mullins one, when I first saw it, when he posted it, I was just like, what? Because he captured this moment of, oh, the car is just crossing the tracks. Like, there's so much tension in this, I feel, and gesture. And then Norman Rockwell, who I think is just one of the greatest artists in terms, well, I suppose illustrator. If it's illustration, I would say he's probably, in my humble opinion, the greatest illustrator. Because he tells so much with his story. Like, in this one picture, you have so much of an insight into these people. Like, oh, they light their fireplace thing, and oh, they do their things here, and here's a cat watching everything, and oh, they have comic books, and it's a barber shop, and the people are in the background talking and stuff, and it's just wow, so
playing music.
Are they playing music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a guy with a violin, and they're all playing.
It's just very impressive to me how much story you cram in, and then he uses a lot of caricature as well, which I really respect. So this is work that I used to, if someone said, show me work you like, I probably would have shown them work like this. But it's more work I admire, I would say, now that I've thought about it more. Because in terms of liking it, I don't really like the subject matter. I don't really like the emotions necessarily. I don't really like the, with the exception of like maybe her, because she's just like a pretty girl. But I like the technique here. I think it's amazing how good he is with his values and things. But just, yeah, and this is probably what I would have shown in terms of, show me some work you like. Stuff like this anyway. And this is a work I think I've done that is technically proficient. So just stuff that I think doesn't entirely suck in terms of execution.
4 pieces.
This one is super debatable. I don't think this is done technically well, but I think the caricature was spot on. It is like, at the time, it was the most spot on. It's like, God, I totally nailed you. Got you. Anyway, this one, I thought it was good because the bowl felt like a bowl and the brush felt like this is, to me, this feels like that brush. I feel like I could pick it up and it's like, I know exactly the difference between how this feels and how this feels and how this feels. And so thought it was successful. And this one, kind of the similar thing with the orange. It's really crappy photos. I took it a long, long time ago. Many, many years ago. And it's, yeah, just like, oh, I captured the orange kind of well. It feels like an orange. And then with this one, it's just like colors and values, I guess. I feel like, well, it's pretty okay. If someone told me it sucked, it's like, well, okay, fine. It sucks maybe in terms of form, maybe in terms of drawing. But I don't think it sucks in terms of values or color. So,
I bet you wouldn't say it sucks if it was somebody else's work.
Well, I wouldn't say it sucks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if someone else did, Like I can see, for instance, how this cheek is much more round than this one, and this kind of gets flat, and this feels like it caves in too much. With the ears, they're okay, but they don't feel too much like ears. I feel like this needs to be a bit more subtle in the transition. The brushstroke's fine, whatever, it's okay.
Nitpicking!
Well, I'm just saying because sometimes I say I don't like the piece and people comment like, what don't you like about the piece? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to find trying to say what I think and why. Like with this one, I feel like it's very flat. Like this feels too flat. This tooth especially doesn't feel like it's facing any proper direction. It's kind of like it's facing this way diagonally. And then this feels very flat. But yeah, so I think of all the work I've done, maybe there's about these 4 that I feel are technically proficient. And then this is stuff I feel is really well done. So if someone's like, well, what do you think is good if that's bad? I think this is good. So yeah. All right, sneak peek at the next topic. Guess just to recap, like this is stuff I really like. I think it's cool, and this is stuff that I think this is the direction I feel like I need to head in, and then I just need to combine everything.
When did you start sort of mixing it between things you like the Xenogears and the sketchy stuff and the characters and more anime stuff, and when did you sort of start to replace it with here's what I think I like, here's what I tell myself I like?
Probably when I was like 15, 16, 17, around those years was really a turning point, because prior to that I was very stuck on subject matter. Like if I thought it was cool to me. And I wasn't really caring about skill. And for instance, if you showed me a Bugoro piece, like even if you showed me like 16-year-old me this, maybe 15-year-old me, I would be like, well, yeah, I don't care about, like, it's just some girls like dancing around. I don't care about this. It looks stupid.
He got burnt. It's a good thing he's dead.
No, it's not. He hasn't been insulted.
He hasn't been insulted.
I have insulted myself with such a stupid opinion. Yeah, I wouldn't have been impressed. I would have thought like this was like, well, yeah, it's people walking down a street. I don't really care. Like,
but that's still an honest and subjective thing. So you sort of lost that or put it in the background and then just...
Yeah, even this I would say like, well, that's nice. It's trees and a mountain and stuff. But like, I'd rather see like 2 guys fighting with swords and like just action and like, I would say I'd rather see this. Like that. Just show me Joe Mad stuff. That's cool. Like, yeah, he's got spikes and a sword and there's a monster and he's gonna kill it and cool. So once I realized how foolish I was, I stopped. Like there was a time when I started looking at Bugoro's work and Sargent as well, and it was like, wait a minute, this is really good. And then I got like this I don't know, like a shudder ran through my body, a tremor, and it was this, oh shit, oh fuck, this is good. And then it was a case of just looking at skill and realizing like, oh, this is really skillfully done. And then I just switched. I think I just became someone who I couldn't trust myself because I was a fool. I was the type of person who looked at a picture and dismissed it. So that...
You completely discredited yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Well...
Baby in the bathwater.
Yeah.
But how, like, when did you start sort of noticing the skill? Because that's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, when did skill become, like, when did it get on your radar?
Mm,
And how?
I think Andrew Loomis was a start because he had this thing where he did mostly drawings and it looked good and it was realistic and it was like, well, that looks good. That looks good to me, but it's also realistic and it's skillfully done. And I saw how he was shading and it felt like, I don't know how you did that, but that's really well done. But at the same time, I don't really care about the subject matter. And it took me a while to get into paintings because I never really looked at paintings. It wasn't a thing that I did. There were forums when I started looking at art. There were forums that had like anime and drawing and stuff, and that's where I would go. And then there were the concept art side of things, and the concept art things were like often it was hard surface design, like mechs and tanks and guns and pirates, and yeah, there was a lot of pirates.
Pirates are hard surface?
They're very hard surface. It was just stuff that was very testosterone driven, it felt. Like just, I'm a man, here's a machine gun and I'm going to blow you up. And it wasn't stuff I was really, like I like Kenshin. And I like these like fast and sharp and I guess agile things. I really liked agility. Like in terms of hard surface design, I really like fighter planes. Because, I mean, the modern ones, because they're all like pointy and they look fast. They look like...
They look quite menacing.
Yeah, they just, to me, it's very cool. Whereas other stuff is just, it's too boxy. It's too brutish.
But Joe Mad is quite boxy.
Yeah, but he's also sharp.
I guess.
That's why it works for me.
I suppose I called him fluffy.
For me, it's like, you know, I would say it's like crispy and sharp. Hey, look at that.
I think he's chunky.
Yeah.
More than
I
anything.
think all the artists, like, all the stuff I like is a bit chunky. It's got, like, volume and negative space. Like, that's why I like these ones. It's, like, really nice negative space to me. And a good... Like, I like how simple that is. I like how it flows. And then it's like, okay, you've said a lot with a little. And this was something I always really admired that. Like, when I would see pictures that were line drawings and someone got the entire face in with one line, it was very, whoa, you're good. So I guess I had that Japanese thing about minimalism and say a lot with very little, and that's very good. And when I saw, you know, like super detailed pieces, it was like you're saying like this. It's like you're saying a lot, but you're saying it with a lot. Which I suppose is somewhat ignorant anyway, because it's probably pretty simplified forms if you look, like if you zoomed in. But yeah.
So when you were young, if somebody had shown you that slide with art that you like, how many of them, or how would you have responded to those?
This one? I would have said, this is cool. 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 Don't know. This is cool. This is This is cool. I don't like this one. This is cool. Don't really like this one. And this one's looks pretty cool.
So it's quite shifted from just...
Not a lot. I wouldn't say that much.
30-70?
No, it's pretty... Yeah, I mean, in terms of 70% hasn't changed. Yeah. But I don't know. I think a lot of... When I was young, I was stupid. That's how I see it. It's a lot of just... You don't think... Or maybe you dislike one little part of it. And so you write the whole thing off. Or you really like one little part of it. And so the whole thing is great. And I see that with younger artists. Maybe they're not as stupid as I was, but just a lot of prejudice and thinking they know what's good. And that's kind of why I include like these type of technical things, because it feels like at some level you just have to show that you can do it, and then you're taken seriously. If you can paint a picture and it looks like the thing, that's cool. That's a sign of skill. Whereas if you're like super stylized, that's not as cool. So I feel like, to me personally, like this is as cool as this. But someone could look at this and say, well, that's just a drawing, it's not even good. And they could look at this and say, well, this artist is much better. They actually know how to paint. And to me, it's the same thing. It's like, no, one is just more fleshed out. It's not like one is necessarily better. It depends on what your point is. Like, what are you going for? And it seems like a lot, especially when I look at the art that I've done that people like. Like this one, I had some reference for the pose, and it just feels like meh, I don't care. I don't like this with the harp. It's like, okay, yeah, okay, she's putting these, or entrancing these goblins, but I don't feel like these shapes are great. I think they're I don't know. I just don't like it that much. Like this one especially, it feels super clumsy. The position on the page is bad. You've got too much negative space on this side. Everything's too stretched vertically. There's not a strong sense of anatomy. You look at this arm, it's like pretty much a straight line. Like, fine, I guess you could say, well, that balances with this. But this leg's going off in a way that seems like it's very off balance. You've got an arm just sticking out here. That's what? This part. Yeah, this part of the thing comes out too much, and then it doesn't feel elegant at all. It's like, oh, you're trying to be all fancy with the hair, but really you've got these shapes that they don't have a true flow at all to them. They have this sort of clumped together feeling of, yes, you have some detail, but it's all frazzly. You've got too much of the same amount of space between these two, and then this little thing in the middle. It's just like, to me, this is very poor design. And a lot of my designs are poor designs, but I mean, especially like this just seems bad to me. The colors aren't really good in my view. And I don't know if that's being overly harsh or just maybe not even harsh enough, especially for some people. They seem to really have a...
Is there any difference between the group of pictures on this page that you painted like a few years back and then the two more recent ones?
What are the two more recent ones?
The Batman and
the difference? This one has a lot more design involved. There's a lot more thought for negative shapes. This is when I actually understood a bit more about like pushing things and putting caricature into things. I think this is pretty lame with the repetition of these shapes. Maybe it's too much. For the Batman symbol, I don't think this was necessary, actually. And then with this one, it feels a bit... I don't know, I still don't really like it. It feels a bit too desaturated. If I had to say which of these I like the most, I suppose it would be the Batman and then this one. Probably this one would win out as the one I like the most on this page. I don't know if that answers what you're...
I was just wondering, like, because you have two clumps of sort of chronologically distinct pictures, I was wondering, like, what's changed in the sort of time in between them? Do you... okay, so you put a lot more fundamentals and a lot more design into your recent pieces than you did in the first ones.
Maybe not. I put in a lot of fundamentals into the old pieces because I needed them.
You used a lot more reference.
Yeah.
Well, you used reference, I guess.
Well, this one... Okay, so this one I did. The genie I did. This one I did. And this one I didn't. This one I didn't. Like, all these... This, and this have no reference, except this one did for the wolf. And this one did for the lady and the harp. Because I didn't know what a harp looked like. So, yeah, it's kind of... The most reference is probably this one and the genie, these two. Although, I mean, I didn't use reference for glowing hands, but that's just make it light.
So why do you think these are the most attractive to...
I think they're just the most done. I think people look at detail per square inch.
Surface covered.
Yeah, just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of texture. And then there's sort of a... I guess one of the reasons I dislike these especially is they just seem like cliche ideas. I had to do a lizard barbarian and it was like, well, that sounds really done to death. But the only thing I could think of to make it unique is change color. Like make it teal. So that's the only, like, I feel like this is... I hate the body. There's a lack of anatomy. There's like, okay, you've got some basic muscles, but there's no good gesture here. It feels really, I don't know, it just feels bad to me. And then, like, of all of it, I think this part, if it was just this as the image and get this hand out of the way, I think it's okay. But the rest, it's like, nah, not really. And it just, I don't know, it's got your embers and your atmosphere, and it just seems like the expected thing. And maybe it's cool, like, well, what it's missing is a ton of rim light, I guess, and then an even stronger foreground. I probably would need to blur things even more and maybe add some chromatic aberration.
Then you're done. You've got a cake.
Use more custom brushes, have a bit more texture. Yeah, then you're done. So I don't know. It's just like maybe on some level I might like them more if I didn't have to... I suppose one of the things that changed things was just using reference. It always felt like you're not really painting, you're just copying a thing. And when I found out that, well, that's just what you do, and almost all artists who do illustration use reference, it was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what you're supposed to do, but it felt like I was a craftsman, not an artist. Where is the emotion in this? There is an idea being represented, but not. It didn't feel like there was really much.
But Rockwell has emotion, and he used a lot of reference.
Yeah, Rockwell's fine. I think people who use reference, that's not necessarily the thing that makes them bad or good. It's just with me, the process of it. It's like, well, first of all, they're realistic, and I don't really like realism too much. I prefer my drawings of things. I like things to be more suggestive. I like them to be a bit more abstract. And these felt too, no, this is this and this is, like, this is what it is. And I didn't think they were done really well. So, I don't know. I'm getting kind of depressed.
Oh, no! Okay, I just had one more question. I hope it doesn't...
Okay.
I was wondering... Okay, so I know I saw you doing the first batch of the textures and everything, but what do you feel like you gained when you look at these?
You mean this?
Yeah. Like when you did these slides, okay, before and after, what new understanding have you gained? Or...
Well, the first thing, and possibly the biggest thing, is more of I know my value range. I know I'm doing this on purpose and not because I have some lack. Because before I just kept thinking of it as I'm using midtones and I would get it to a certain point, and it would look like everything looked kind of okay to me, but I would look at it then from how does this compare to what you're taught? Like, oh, it's missing strong darks, it's missing the lights, so I would tend to darken the darks. And then when I darkened the darks, everything else felt very flat. So suddenly it was like, well, the midtones that used to be subtle now feel like they're too close and they're washed out and they need more detail. So then I would detail them more. And then it felt like, okay, but now the lights are also doing that. So then everything kind of turned into more of a rendered thing, but it lost a lot of the initial thing that I actually liked, which was the subtlety and like, oh, the values aren't that far apart. And one of the things I really struggle with is modeling in terms of getting, like with this one, it's not super rounded. It still feels kind of flat, which is good because this is a flat plane. Whereas I would blend the things too much, so everything is trying to become a sphere. And it's one of the reasons I don't like some of the ways of doing anatomy in terms of cylinders and spheres and stuff, because everything gets too washed out, like the forms. Like this form, fine, it's rounded, but this form is not. But if you blended this, you would lose the fact that it's actually sharp. So it's stuff like that I feel I need to get better, is how to separate my how to model the form turns. I think this one's really good for it. I like how this was done. I like how, yeah, you have darks, but they still give breathing room for the rest.
That's very nice, right?
Yeah. Svetlin, I think his name is Velinov. I really like this piece, and I like some of his older pieces, and I'm not as big of a fan of what he's doing now. It's kind of what I feel happened with a lot of artists, is they just end up doing card art so much and their work turns a bit stale. It feels like that to me anyway. There's a few artists that I really used to think they were doing cool work, and then it's like, oh, you're kind of losing what you used to have. Felt like there was more identity, and that needed to be preserved.
Yeah, I suppose if you're listening to this podcast and you're gonna go into if you're planning to go into a job type thing, you should sort of be aware that you should preserve your identity. You should not stop doing your own things.
Yeah,
as much as you can.
But I imagine it gets really hard to do that, especially if you're spending most of your time drawing or painting, then to come home and then paint some more could be kind of a difficult thing to do.
I remember you telling me some pretty bad stories about, make it look more like this artist, make it look more like this, and make the boobs bigger.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the... I feel that's low-tier freelancing, or maybe even mid-tier. A lot of it, I don't know about high-tier, because... but anyway, in terms of what I do know, there was a lot of that I had to go through. It's like, okay, we want the art to look like this artist, and it's like, well, that's your job, so that's what you do.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're really looking for too much personality. I mean, you have certain superstar artists, which, yes, you get hired because of your personality, but usually they already have a fan base, and they have something going for them that's like, this has proven to be successful, and so you need to or you get to be in that tier where we'll hire you for being you. And for me, that's kind of what I wanted to do, and I can't say it's been successful so far. In terms of jobs and things, I get a lot fewer offers ever since I switched to the pointy chin stuff than I ever did in the past. And maybe it's also just being in North America and having, like most of the clients that I worked with before were the sort of either European or North American thing. So they had that, I guess, Western mentality of what they wanted with the art. And it's not really less is more. It's more, add more stuff, render more stuff, make it look finished. And I've heard people talk about this too, like, oh, this guy's really good because their work is really detailed. And to me, I never viewed detail as good. Detail was sort of like irrelevant. Like, well, it can matter if it's important. If it's adding to something, then fine, it's necessary. But just because it's detailed doesn't mean it's good. Just because there is a large, like maybe an artist is doing a drawing, let's say this one. Just because there's a large amount of empty space that you didn't draw anything in, you didn't add a bunch of buttons everywhere and pockets and this and that and all these shading, hatching marks, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
In fact, knowing where to put the emptiness is super high level in terms of skill. And like the artists I really like tend to do that a lot. Like you have this big empty space, but it's in this thing, and then you have detail in certain spots. You have details that usually are around the edges of things, and you tend to have details grouped together, and then you have a big amount of empty space, and then some more like empty space, and then detail, and empty space.
Yeah, because really none of the work you have selected is lacking detail.
Yeah.
It's just carefully considered.
Yeah, that's what I think. I suppose the most detailed one in terms of just stuff everywhere is this one. But even this, like you can see how if you zoom into this level, it's like, oh, there's like detail, but all of this is empty space. Like there's so much emptiness. Anyway, does that answer all the questions?
I guess.
All right.
I guess it does. Oh no.
Well, now it's your turn.
Oh no.
So while I was doing this, we're really struggling for ideas for these podcasts. This is something that happens a lot.
Yeah.
We really struggle with ideas.
I guess we got lucky that the patrons sort of voted for your process first.
In a way, because like I really want to say something interesting and relevant and stuff.
Yeah, and it sucks to have the same issues to rehash, and
yeah,
it's not a cool thing. So we were really struggling, and then you had been doing your mapping out.
Yeah, I did the values one.
Yeah, you did the values, and then you were putting it together, and then I was thinking, just talking to different students, and usually it's a good idea, and we kind of want this from them in the first session at least, to sort of assemble a profile of themselves. And then I was thinking, like, well, this is something I would kind of wish that more people did, because it's really, I feel like it's really missing when you're an artist, and especially when you're starting out and you're kind of confused. You're kind of not sure who you are, what you like, and more importantly, what you want to do. So.
And especially when they're kind of in separate images or separate folders, and they're not all together.
Yeah.
It can be really hard to get a sense, because when I started putting the images down, that's when I noticed immediately the value thing.
Yeah, the value thing.
Like, oh, these values aren't, like you just look at them on one page and think, what do these things have in common? And then it's, oh, okay, that's what. There's a lot of similarities in where the colors are and how they appear and stuff.
Yeah, so after seeing this, I was thinking, like, well, maybe we could talk about it and sort of show how to do it in a way. And yours is very structured and everything. And while you were doing yours, I realized, well, I guess I should approach mine as well. Yeah, so you were doing your chart of the things you like and the values and the textures and the artwork. And I was thinking about my own version of it. And I realized that my way of thinking about things is more like, I feel the need to heap everything in the same pile and then sort of arrange it until it makes sense to me. Sort of like directions and flows and who's related to who and who's connected to who and why this and why this other artist and what do I like and what do I want. And in terms of what I like and what I want, there wasn't much that was unclear to me, because on one hand, when I was growing up, pretty much since I was 3 years old, or as far back as I can remember, I was always grabbing these these oil painting books that my grandparents had in their bookcases, and my grandpa was sort of learning how to paint. Like he was doing some oil studies and at this local figure drawing type of art school, a really small thing. And I kept grabbing his paintings and sort of stealing the ones I liked and sort of hoarding them. And they tended to be the same type of painting. So in the corner there, I tended to like Rembrandt's works, and I not only like Rembrandt's works, as in the oil paintings and the portrait and the poise of his subjects. Well, in this case, it's himself. But also that yellowy lighting and how it goes. Like I really liked how it went with the frame and with the shadow cast by the frame, because the frames were so thick and they had I don't know, I felt like they had a point of their own. And this sort of Baroque, sort of frilly nonsense sort of decorations were always attractive to me. So in the painting underneath, this is one I actually identified much later. Most of the paintings in those books that I grew up with were reproduced in black and white only. So it took me a long time to realize that I really like desaturated colors, and I really like, I guess, gray on gray. And I hadn't even thought about it until Psycho and I started talking, and I tended to like, oh, look, it's an overcast day, it's raining outside, isn't this great, isn't this weather pretty, or it's foggy and you can barely see anything, and my eyes were much more happy about just a drizzle or
well, because you could see stuff.
Yeah, I can see stuff.
For me, I couldn't even see anything.
Yeah, when we're driving and it's like foggy or snowy or just a blizzard, and it's like I can see the mountains. I can finally see details. I remember a little while ago we were driving and it was about to rain, about to snow, and I was just very happy looking at the scenery, looking at a lake and whatever, and you were.
Oh, because you said, oh, the colors are so pretty.
Yeah, the colors are so pretty. I was seeing so many greens, so many things in the shadows, and usually when it's sunlight outside, my eyes tend to hurt, and I wear darker glasses because of it, because
you're photophobic.
Yeah, I can't just be outside and be normal. Yeah, so with these paintings, with a portrait of the Empress Maria Alexandrovna. So this is a German painter. Winterhalter is his name, and he apparently, I did a bit of research on him, and he used to be the sort of like the trendiest portrait painter of royalty of his time, and the dresses he paints are very specific, and below there's a dress here that is so one of his contemporaries was a guy called Worth, and he had sort of like a fashion house type thing. It was called House of Worth, and he tended to supply the same outfits that Winterhalter was painting. And I had no idea about this until much later, actually quite recently, but it's pretty converging. Everything seems to be, that's why I was when I was doing my chart, I thought it was pretty boring. It's more of the same and a little bit of variation, but not that much. So when you look at them, they're spread into two halves, and there's some things in the middle. So on the left half, there are these, I guess, my first impressions, very, I don't know, influences, I guess you would say. And among them, there are some of my own works. Now, I really suck in terms of using reference, so I don't know, I guess it doesn't hold my attention that long. I don't have a lot of energy for working from reference, so the best I can do is sort of conjure the feeling of the pieces I like in my head and try to put it in my own work. And I'm not doing a great job at it, so I'm glad I didn't exactly have to do a slide of pictures of my work that I like, because it would be blank. I would have been so depressed. But yeah, so this is a portrait that I painted of my cat, Pisiku, and that's the original cat below it. I painted this from life, and I painted it digitally, and I did it pretty quickly, and the fear was the worst part. I was so overwhelmed by fear that I do not know what I'm doing. I have no training, no information other than, well, I guess I've seen a lot of paintings, and it was so scary. But I'm kind of glad I did it. In hindsight, I'm glad I tried, and sort of kind of like casting a fishing pole. And, well, am I gonna get an old boot, or maybe I'm gonna get some treasure or something of the sort? And kind of, well, I guess this is where my level is, and this is where I need to improve from. And now seeing it on the same page as the the, the proper paintings and everything is kind of sad, but it's good to gauge your own, where you are. Maybe you're not as bad as you thought you were. Honestly, I thought I was much worse than that, which is a good thing, but I am much worse than I had hoped I would be, so that's bad. And then more recent influences were not so much, I guess I wouldn't call them influences on my own, because I sort of tend to seek out things that I want anyway. Like, okay, so I really like turbans. When I was a kid, I was pestering my grandpa to teach me how to tie a turban, like a piece of cloth and whatever. There's some things that I find really appealing about their volume and their shape, and I guess more so than just that, it's their slant on the head. And this this specimen is one of the best looking movies that I have seen. Just maybe the best looking movie. It's called Bajirao Mastani. And it's an Indian movie. It's a Bollywood, so expect like dancing and everything. But the lighting, the outfits, some of the music is very good. And it's just very, very articulate in terms of pleasing, for me at least, for me, pleasing textures, pleasing shapes, pleasing colors and lighting patterns, and just pretty much in this frame, every single detail I think is well crafted. Even his mustache and his face and whatever just goes with everything. And next to it is Russian kokoshnik. And I suppose whichever culture I go through, I kind of find the same things. Oh, you have a weird looking headgear, and you have a lot of thingies dangling from it, and you've got sort of pearls and bling everywhere. And there's something that I find very comforting about that. Just the hanging stuff from your head. And as I started drawing more and more, my first, I guess, bout with drawing was as I was starting high school, and I didn't really draw much until my second year of university. So most of these drawings are, I guess, a few years old. The only one that's in high school is this one. And this was just, I used to draw a lot during class. Actually, I wasn't drawing almost at all at home. And I wasn't planning my drawings. I don't think I ever planned one of my drawings. It was just whatever came out, whatever I was feeling tended to come out. And with this one, I did a lot of doodles that were kind of similar to this one, but this page was sort of the first bigger one that I did. And just, oh, you have squiggles, you have tentacles, you have people sort of, but they're not really people, they're just creatures, and they're sort of disjointed, and they're deformed. I don't know. I guess that's what they were called. I just saw them as, I guess I don't see them as anything really. It's just what I do. So they tended to be a lot more animalistic than what I was looking at when I grew up. So the more I drew, the further away from those proper dresses and Baroque frillies and everything things went. So with more recent things, there are a few of these pieces that I feel like I wish I could do them better. I guess that's the highest thing I can say about my work. Oh, with this piece, I wish I could do it better. I wish I knew how to do it better. So I started calling them cauliflowers a few years back because they tend to have a bulging head. So it's either like a complete tumor type thing altogether, or they just have big hair. And so between these two extremes of you have these beastly cauliflowers who are sort of contorted and deformed, and they have more just tension in them. Like I feel like they're a lot more connected to something like Steve Houston's work, where I really like his boxers. Well, his painting of people hitting each other, because there's so much tension in it. There's so much this guy's gonna hit this other guy, and you can feel it, and it's not steady. Like when I look at it, I feel like it's moving, like it's about to hit, it's about to and there are some photographs of contemporary ballet that have this sort of push and pull tandem between them, and I suppose it's a lot of ugliness in, like, I like mummies that are frozen in pretty, I guess, suffering positions. I guess I don't like them. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, but I am drawn to looking at these pictures and sort of hoarding images of them. And then below is a painter that I really like. His name is Sergei Kolesov, and he does these very atmospheric paintings that really resonate with me. He's got this swampy type of just dead, and because he must have, I would wager he grew up in under communism, and whatever, it really is familiar. Like, I know what those buildings would feel like. I know what the dust in the air feels like on your face. I know what this green on the floor signifies. And it's very clear, I guess. When I found his art, I got really kind of happy. And with my own things, I want to replicate them. I want to sort of convey the things that are in my head. I want to put them outside of my head and sort of look at them. So in the middle of these two, there's sort of these hybrids that I've done. The most mixed ones are as an influence or as a thing I like to watch. The Royal Opera House did this ballet, this adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, and their Red Queen, I feel like, is the closest to what a real life cauliflower would be. And she's okay. She doesn't look weird or anything, but I feel like the tendons in her arms and her the way they staged her dance is very disjointed and aggressive, and I guess in a way you would call it manic. But it's very cohesive. She is a creature in and of its own. She's in a league of her own, and it's sort of, I guess I sort of tried to do that with this cauliflower. That is, I don't know, what I like in the pictures that I see and the people that I see. Is most of all the expression. And when I think about expression, I don't think of just facial expression. I think about just what is the body saying as well. And there's this really skeptical type of look, but this underlying aggression that keeps coming up in the things that I research and everything. So in terms of textures that I collected and I really like, I really like greens. I like swampy greens, and I like the type of avocado greens. This is actually an avocado that got sculpted, and I thought it was really, really cool. And reds of a certain type. The types that never come out right in printing. I don't know. I guess that's roughly about it. I feel like there's a lot of just repetitive things. So you got two types of cauliflowers, and that's it.
I don't really see it as too repetitive, and like when you talk about it, it always seems very like you'll say, oh, it's just the same thing, but it doesn't really feel like the same thing. And even if it was the same thing, I don't think that's wrong or bad. One of the things I've noticed with the things you gravitate towards is there's definitely the tension thing you said, like even in like these two, I guess, feel the same.
Yeah, that's why I tried to put them together so that they form a sentence.
Yeah, so like there's tension, but there's also, it's probably more in the stuff that I see you look at, but there's always volume of some kind. Like this one's very voluminous.
Yeah, that's Piotr Jablonski's work.
Yeah, the textures.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the values are very close. And they do mostly have quite a high level of detail going on.
Yeah.
And so this one you did...
This one started off... Like, I did this one as a sort of a joke. It started off as a photo manipulation, but then by the end I just painted pretty much the entire thing because it wasn't doing what I had. Okay, so when I first got a tablet, it was I think I was in the third year of university, and it was after my burnout phase, which lasted quite a while, and I didn't know how to use it. So so a lot of this is super clumsy and super, I don't know what I'm doing. And I wanted to get the feeling of a summer. So I collected mind images of a summer, and I just put them all together. And I made that.
Romanian summer.
Yeah, like I went to visit a mosque, and those speaker things, they had those speakers because I went all the way up to the tower and I was right next to the speakers, and it just felt like booming in my ear, so I wanted to keep that. I don't know. It's I don't know, it just feels, the thing is, I don't know how to talk about these things, and it feels super redundant, because I already know this. Why is there a need for this?
Well, it's for communication purposes.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people have that where they know what they want in their head, and when they describe it, it tends to be words like, well, I want to do, concept art or something. It's like, well, even if I asked you verbally without any images, what do you want to do? And you described your image, it's much harder to get a sense of it than if I just look at this board. And then you have visual representations of some of the things. It's like, even what you said, like, oh, you want the feeling of movement like in Steve Houston, and then like in this pic, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Like, pretty much all of them are conveying a thing. Like this one seems a bit out of place.
Oh, that's sort of like, I have a specific type of eyes. So I really, really like slanted eyes, and it's a specific shape and a specific slant. Now, I like eyes with no pupils, and she has pupils, sadly. Well, I guess not sadly for her, but she sadly has pupils, but these eyes were the closest human eyes that I found. Like I just naturally gravitate towards that shape whenever I draw an eye, and when I want to draw a different type of eye, I tend to draw this shape and then have to erase it and correct it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
What do you see when you look at map like this?
for me, it's there's like the safe side and the not safe side. So this is more the safe side. And then this is more the
What happened there?
like I'm not a fan of grotesque things. So like all this imagery, for instance, is pretty gross to me, pretty disturbing. And like this, I feel pretty safe around. It's like, okay, yeah, it's just a painting. It's just pretty, not the guide, but I mean the painting. It's like, okay, this is fine. And then the decorative thing, it's not like I'm really relating to it, but it's okay, I understand. And I guess since we live together, I get to see what palettes you choose a lot. So I'm pretty familiar with these colors as it's basically our upstairs. So it's like, okay, so that's that. But to me, what I mostly see is suffering and agony and things like that. Like in these ones, I don't know, it just reminded me of this one, kind of reminds me of you, and this one of your mom, which, I don't know, I guess because of the hair is more curly.
But that's not hair, that's supposed to be a wig.
Well, whatever.
Skills, man, I had them.
Yeah. And then these things I don't like to look at. And then these are interesting. It's pretty, like, I don't know, I like this one is cool.
That's tea.
Yeah, that's cool. This one looks gross to me.
Oh.
I don't, just get an uncomfortable feeling. These ones are okay. Like the underwater people.
Yeah. I really like underwater lighting.
Yeah. And then the cats are just cats because you like cats, so.
This one actually is not a cat because I like cats. It's because it's got the slanted eyes. And when I started sort of analyzing my own drawings in the recent years from a more psychological standpoint, I realized that a lot of the features I draw on people kind of look like cats. Like the way I do noses on people is not necessarily looking like a cat nose, but the shape is very similar, even the lips and the upper lip. And in terms of the motifs in my images and the art I do, they're very sort of telling. I guess I don't mind it that much, but it's not news. Like, for example, the one next to the cat is a video I really like, which is a ballerina walking on knife shoes. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty easy to find. I think it's the first hit you get when you look up ballerina on knives. And the way she moves is a lot like my cauliflowers would. So my cauliflowers don't have feet. They stab the ground. So just analyzing my work from kind of like an outsider point of view, they don't have feet. And feet tend to be the way you connect with the world. So, well, I connect with the world by stabbing it. So they have pretty powerful arms, and that's sort of how you move and do things around the world. Like, what's your grasp on things? And that's pretty important. And in terms of their hair and the importance and the volume in their hair, I guess I am very cerebral, but it's also kind of like a tumor.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought your cauliflowers were like brains.
Yeah. There's one in the middle, a photograph that is very, very close to that sort of shape. Sadly, she's got feet. But the way the slime drips on her and the way it's mapped onto her is very, very, like... I guess there are two sides also in the sense of what I want to draw and then how I want to paint it. And how I want to paint it is pretty safe and pretty whatever, but what I want to draw is pretty disgusting, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What I've noticed is a lot of, especially women, seem to really respond to your work, so...
Boobs!
That's not just about the boobs, though. It seems like the aggression seems to
latent
be very...
aggression.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of...
Only mine's not that latent. It's pretty explicit. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird to think of that. So why do you think? Okay, so if some student sent you, like, if you had a lesson with a student and then they sent you this, what would you gather from it? What would you tell them? Or
Well, first, I guess I would ask them about pretty much what you already explained. You know, what does it mean? For instance, like this one, how is this one related to this one? And so this one seems really regal, and this one has, it's not quite. And just trying to connect it, because it feels like, okay, so you do like gilded things, you do like fancy things, but I guess like this, it's also gross. And I suppose I would be more interested as just trying to figure out how can I help them, or like, okay, so you like values that are close together, you like these types of things, maybe you need to do studies of slime if you're not, or try and get all this into your work. And I mean, I think you're pretty much doing it, and it's, like kind of finding, okay, so you like shapes, so let's get shapes into your work. Because when I look at this image, for instance, it has really nice shapes. It's got this big teardrop, and then this big circle, and it's got design. Whereas this one, it's like, it's got shapes, but it feels like they need more strength. Whereas this one also has this big triangle shape. And I guess, I don't know, because I can't really comment on the emotions you're trying to convey, because that's your part of it. I always think, that I really disagree with the we should teach creativity type thing. I think that's kind of what the student comes with. Perhaps, if anything, it seems self-knowledge is what's important, to figure out who you are. And I think the act of doing this is good, even if you weren't going to be a student, and if you just haven't done stuff like this. I think it's good anyway to get a sense of who you are, because otherwise it's, especially for people like me, it's very hard to, or it's easy rather, to get distracted and to focus more on like, well, what is skillful or what is popular, what is expected. Because something I've heard from a few students of ours recently is almost well, if you are going to go into art, you have to go into the thing that makes money, which is then this.
Yeah.
And then everything is built around how to make money with art, as opposed to just art. Like, what do you want to say with your art? And I think it is kind of difficult, because if I look at your stuff, it's like, well, okay, yeah, where do you fit in terms of the industry? You might not fit. Maybe in terms of fine art, yeah, I could definitely see it. So it would be a bit tricky to come up with where they want to go. But the thing I think that's important is that you have a direction, and if nothing else, you at least do personal work. That is what you want to see. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering anything sufficiently. I feel like I'm not.
No.
Your things, there are crossovers. Like, it's funny because this image, the Rwangia one, and this Steve Houston one, I was also gonna, like, I was almost putting them in my thing.
Even for me, it's like, oh, should I put Joe Madden? Should I? But I try to only put in things that relate to what I do, not so much what I don't do. Because those are like, anime, and I consume anime, but not so much would do it. Yeah. But like this image as well, I remember hovering over that for a long time, because it has a lot of the things that I like in my stuff, and it's got a similar value range, but I decided this was too dark in the end. Like, if this was a bit lighter, I would have picked it. And then it was, but I really like this image, so I mean, I guess there's crossover. But I think what's really good, and this is what I would tell a student if they showed me this as well, is like, it seems like you really have a direction.
And coming from someone who was struggling with direction, although, I mean, when I really look at it now, it's like,
not that
if I look
direction.
at art I've done that I like,
It's very
pretty
similar.
girls, like, okay, so you've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 that aren't pretty girls.
Yeah.
Or 5 maybe. 6.
I think he qualifies
7.
as a pretty girl because he's a boy.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's pretty basic. I guess I need to just draw them until I get good enough that just be at like lowish level. Just draw girls. But yeah, I think it's I think your direction's really clear and strong, so then it's just figuring out, okay, now in what order are you going to get the skills to do what you need to do?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to learn about design first or values and I think right now what's really important, and I think this is often the case for a lot of students, is just experimenting in mileage, like trying things, because the more you try things and get over the fear of trying them, for instance, maybe you really want to try oil painting, but you're afraid of it. The quicker you just get it done, and maybe it will help later to read books and learn about it, but it just takes the edge off. You're not as afraid, because even if you screw it up badly, you know a lot more than before you started. For better or for worse, you know a lot more in terms of like, maybe you think like, well, it's going to be really hard to match the colors. What you don't realize is, I didn't even know I'm supposed to use a medium, and I used all my paint or something like that. So, yeah, I guess that's it. That's pretty much all. Do you have anything to add? No. Yeah. No. So, basically, the point is maybe try this yourself. Maybe it'll help to get things, and if you've already done it, good for you.
If you want to post it in the comments, I for one would be interested.
Yeah,
I'm really curious.
I'm not sure how much YouTube lets you post links, but if it does, then that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Hope this helped, and thanks for watching.